Hey, Joe Walsh here. Who will Trump's Supreme Court nominee be? We'll talk about it when Freedom returns at 5.
And some breaking news from Thailand. The 6th and 7th boys have been pulled out alive from that Thai cave. So
all right,
that's good news.
We'll stay on that as well as will Mike Scott, keep you updated on those rescue efforts. But what about all things economic and rescuing our economy here in Illinois?
Nice. I see what you did there.
Story out of Granite City down in southern Illinois, the U.S. Steel plant down there, which I have toured.
Yes.
They're firing up the furnaces again because of, they would argue, because of Trump's tariffs on foreign steel that are affording a plant that was shuttered, laying off 2,000 people just 3 years ago, the opportunity to get jump-started again. And this is not inconsistent with what the CEO of U.S. Steel said at the outset of the Trump administration, that he was looking at 10,000 new jobs because of what he believed was a renewed commitment to domestic steel production, even though prior to the tariffs, 3/4 of steel production was domestic. But nonetheless, does this mean that the tariffs are working as intended, and this game of brinkmanship with the Chinese in particular can produce some net positive results? As a free trader, I'm very skeptical, but I do not have the credentials of one Jimmy Pethokoukis, who is a CNBC contributor and columnist for the American Enterprise Institute. So why don't we get his take? James, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hello, James.
Do we have Jimmy? Jimmy Pethokoukis.
This is Steve Moore.
Oh, Steve.
Remember me? I'm an economist.
Steve Moore.
Steve Moore.
Steve Moore doing his best Jimmy Pethokoukis impersonation.
Are you a winner on Jeopardy?
Okay. All right. Well, Steve Moore
But
also.
I'm happy to answer your question, guys.
Steve Moore is also an economist with more credentials than I am, even though he only went to U of I, not Northwestern. And so he can answer that question too. Steve, what about the tariffs and the ratcheting up of brinkmanship between the U.S. and the Chinese?
Well, I'm going to start by saying that so far, just about everything Trump has done on the economy sure seems to be working. I mean, we got that blockbuster jobs report on Friday. We're going to get later this week or early next week, we're going to get the second quarter GDP number, which many economists now believe could be 5% growth. So the economy is absolutely booming right now, 18 months into Trump's presidency. So one of the points I made on CNN the other night was, look, you got to start giving this guy the benefit of the doubt that he knows what he's doing on the economy. Now, we've talked about this before on the show. I am not a fan of the steel tariffs. By the way, where is that steel mill that's reopening?
Granite City in southern Illinois.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a success story, but the problem is for every success story you can find on the steel tariffs, you can point to the Harley-Davidsons and other manufacturing that has actually been hurt by the steel tariffs, where manufacturing jobs are actually put in jeopardy. So I think on balance, given the fact that for every we have something like 100 to 150,000 steel workers in this country, but we have 6 million other manufacturing workers who use steel, and their jobs have been put somewhat in jeopardy by those tariffs. So I think on balance, it's a net loser.
Mm-hmm. Explain why the unemployment rate jumped up higher this last report.
Oh, it's a good reason, because we had, hold on to your hats, guys, 600,000 more Americans enter the workforce. We've been waiting, Dan, about 10 years for a number like that?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, the problem has been, Amy, we used to joke, remember on this show on the Obama years, Obama was going to get the unemployment rate down to zero because everybody was going to drop out of the workforce. And you had millions of Americans who just either stopped looking for work or went on unemployment benefits under Obama. And so the unemployment rate kept going down, even though the job creation numbers weren't very good. Now we're getting really robust job creation. We have now, according to that latest jobs report that came out on Friday, Amy, something like 5 to 6 million more jobs available than people who can fill them. So the fact is we're finally starting to see people get off the sideline and get into the workforce. And one of the things, if you're a teenager or you're a young person out there, sitting around your butt this summer, go out and get a job because they are out there.
Well, we've got other big ideas here. It's not just coming from Trump, and I wanted to run this by you since this is sort of your wheelhouse area, energy policy, and that is the new head of the Democrat Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has a plan to, according to the New Republic, a plan to save the planet, nothing less. And who better to save the planet than a waitress who doesn't understand there's no free lunch? She is proposing a Green New Deal, a plan like FDR's New Deal, but to make us energy independent, 100% renewable energy system by 2035. It will be similar in scale to the mobilization effort seen in World War II or the Marshall Plan, she told the Huffington Post. We must again invest in development, manufacturing, deployment, distribution of energy, but this time green energy. Steve Moore, are you going to be a signatory on the Green New Deal plan?
Well, we were just talking about the reopening of the steel mill. There's an old saying that you can build windmills with steel, right? But you can't build steel with windmills. And so that is a pretty lunatic idea. I mean, the idea that somehow we're going to not produce our, here are the numbers today, by the way. I just looked at those numbers last week. We get about almost 3/4 of our electric power today, our electric power generation in states like Illinois, Massachusetts, and California. 3/4 of it comes from coal and natural gas. You know what percentage of our energy today comes from wind and solar power?
What percent?
3%.
We're up to about 5%. 5%. So so we're going to go. Let me get this
That's
right.
why we
How
need
many
the plan.
birds have lost their lives?
That's
for
why we
just
need
5%?
this. That's why we need this Green New Deal.
Exactly. By the way, we have a very clean, efficient, made in America form of electric power, and of course that is natural gas. It's reduced our pollution levels, reduced our greenhouse gas emissions. It's a source of energy that we have more of than any other country in the world, thanks to the shale oil and gas revolution. Why in the world wouldn't you want to use natural gas? I mean, now by the way, there's another form of electric power that emits virtually zero carbon emissions into the atmosphere. You know what that is?
Nuclear
power. Of course, the left wants to shut down our nuclear plants too. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you want to really put in jeopardy our industrial economy in the United States, try to go with 100%, or even 50%, 30%, renewable energy. What are you going to do in Illinois when the sun isn't shining?
We'll freeze to death. I mean, but that's
the windmills will be turning.
Well, that's a small price to pay for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's ascension.
No, I mean, it is a totally crazy idea. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, by the way, Illinois is a coal state, right? I mean,
yeah.
The United States of America has more natural gas, more coal, and now it turns out more oil. I was just down in the Permian Basin in Texas. We have more of this stuff than any other country in the world. Why in the world wouldn't we want to use it? And by the way, China is laughing. You want to talk about China laughing behind our back in our economic war with China? They're building 50 coal plants right now while we're shutting ours down. How is that going to save the planet?
Speaking of China and these dueling tariffs, Gordon Chang is this scholar who has suggested that.
Yeah, I know Gordon. Yep.
Yeah, that China's a paper tiger and that China is on the precipice of collapse. The Shenzhen is off 40% over the last 3 years. And so what should we be as fearful of China as this looming economic powerhouse as we seem to be, given what Gordon Chang is suggesting?
I'm not an expert on China, but I will say this, that I am pretty good on just sort of how economies work. And China in the last 7 or 8 years has moved away from the freedom model and the free enterprise model that really liberated their economy from Maoism, and moved 500 million Chinese out of abject poverty and starvation. But they've moved in the opposite direction now. They are more central planning. They're state ownership of the means of production. They've moved more back to the socialist model. That history tells us, right, that model doesn't work. And so I do think China may be a bit of a paper tiger, but look, they're a big economy now. They're the second largest economy in the world, just slightly behind the United States. I shouldn't say slightly; they're still well behind us. But but they have been catching up. But I don't think their model is right. I like the American model where we have entrepreneurship. We don't have government. Too often we have government directing investment, but not nearly as much as some of these other countries. And that model works. The model of government deciding where to invest and what industries of the future they are going to put their money behind. It's never worked. I mean, it didn't work for the Soviet Union. It's not going to work for China.
All right. He is Steve Moore, chief economist for CNN. Steve.
And it's not Jimmy P.
Oh, well, you're often confused. You two, you're like his doppelganger.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Have a great day, guys. Bye.
You too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.